We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
With global pals, it's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita.
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast, the podcast where we talk about
everything theater. And boy, we are stretching it out there today. We're going into a whole new area of theater.
This is what's so great about the podcast, Benita, is that we, focus a lot on kind of local stuff, but people hear it from all over the place. And we occasionally, someone reaches out to us and says, hey, you should look into this. And we got this lovely email for our guests today. And I'm so glad we connected with them.
It really, we are talking to Leah Edwards and Dimitri Pittas. Did I pronounce that right, Dimitri?
Sure.
You say it your way. Pittas?
That's okay. No, Pittas.
Pittas.
I accept many answers.
As long as we call you for cocktails.
There you go.
And you guys are in Charleston. It's the Holy City Arts and Lyric Opera, Halo. And my first thought was, we're all theater people. And in college, my voice teacher was sort of a German, jowly fella. And he wanted us to learn how to do vibrato. And he held his hands and he went, opera. And the things that stay with you. So when I hear I think opera, I go, I won't subject you to that again. And I'm sure that's not what you guys are doing, taking out the AirPods. But first thing I got to ask is, most people, I don't want to be rude, I love the South, but you don't think about Charleston as a hotbed of opera. How did you end up there?
Well, those are two really different conversations. We ended up here because we wanted sunshine and palm trees and to not live in the same space where we were performing all the time. And New York became one of these. Obviously, we all know how amazing New York is, but it's not a place one goes to relax necessarily. And at least I did not find that when I lived there. And we were both performing all over the world in the major metropolitan cities and also in New York, and coming home and having sort of downtime right between gigs was
non-existent.
That is not
I love Dimitri's look.
It was
wrong, sister.
So we wanted to move someplace where when we were actually off, that we could really be off and go to the beach. And there would be sunshine and palm trees, and we could have brunch at any hour, and a beverage. I hear there's an adult beverage. And it just, there's so much that's lovely. The pace, as people, I think, associate with the South, the pace is slower. And so it was just a much nicer space to be. When that was the goal, was to have a slower pace. And so we moved here in 2015. In relation to theater, we moved here to hide, so that we didn't have to do any professional performing when we were here. But
I see how well that worked out.
yeah,
Oh yeah, sure.
right.
Worked
So
out.
that's oops. Yeah, Halo's our oops baby. That's but yeah, you say opera's not, or Charleston doesn't seem like a place that's known for opera, but one of the things that we learned when we first moved down here is that, opera actually came to America through Charleston in 1735. Yeah. So I also live I delve too far into history nerddom when given the opportunity. And so we found this out, and as opera people, New Orleans has this, we are the first opera. Well, it turns out, and I had been led to believe this all of my life too. And it turns out that the first French opera that came to America did in fact go through New Orleans. But the first English opera, the first opera of any kind, the art form came through Charleston, and from here morphed into, it was so popular here that as it morphed, and like a lot of things, Charleston, it's a port city, so things come in here and then sort of go around and about the United States. And the same exact thing happened with opera. Opera came through here, it flourished here, and then it left here. And it went on to sort of develop into what is now what became modern American musical theater. And so that is just sort of the very quick from 1735 to the present. That's kind of the history of opera in Charleston. Is it came, it saw, it conquered, and then it became musical theater.
And I go ahead, Ellen. I was going to say, Ellen and I both know that musical theater is the only indigenous form of theater to the United States.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now we know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I know. I learned something today.
Well, it was great talking with you both.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I was wondering if there's any like evidence in Charleston. Obviously, we'll talk about Halo in just a second, but before you guys started up, when you visited, would you realize that it had this rich history of opera, or is everything basically gone?
Well, no, I mean, look, when in the opera world, and probably also in the musical theater world, everybody knows that Porgy and Bess was written here in Charleston. And so, but in terms of like what happened before that, there really isn't a lot of it that is within the public realm anyway. There have been historians that have, done all of the research and shown all those things. And we actually have, as a result of a lot of that research and research that we've done on our own, we curated a walking tour of the history of opera in Charleston. And it's a 90-minute tour that kind of delves a little bit into Porgy and Bess and the beginnings there. But then you actually walk through history, and you stop and hang out for a little bit right where the first opera was performed, on the corner of Church and Broad Street. And then we walk up to the Dock Street Theater, which is one of the first edifices built in America for the purposes of entertainment, a theater essentially. So all of this is here, and it's not really known, maybe outside of Charleston, and maybe even within Charleston too. I think a lot of people, when we have conversations with the locals, they don't really know that. And so what we are doing with Halo is essentially honoring both the the opera that came from Europe and that style of music, but then also what it basically split into and grew into, which is classic American musical theater.
you
to
two
your
have
point-
sung all over the world. You're
Yeah.
internationally renowned.
Yeah.
And that's one type of performing. But what you're sharing is you have so broadened this out and embraced the genre in its many lives and making it accessible. Because look, I don't know, a lot of people, you say opera, they go, yeah, not for me. We know that. Except you're letting them know it is. And how wonderful to open up this world.
Thank you. Yeah, it's it's not easy work, but it is very fruitful. We without getting into March 2020 and the 3 years after that, we absolutely made lemonade out of lemons, and we took that opportunity to engage with our community and find out what it is that they knew about the art form and about the history here and what they didn't. And anytime we had a question, or when we asked them, what things are you afraid of, they would say, well, this or this or this, like, what's keeping you away from opera? And they'd give us answers, and we'd say, well, don't you know that actually that's not a really big deal anymore? And it's things from like, I'm not going to understand it, to things like, I don't know what to wear, and so I'm just not going to go because I don't know how to present myself at the opera. And it's important that people know you can come in whatever you want.
What was so
you guys
fun
took
is
over
that
a baseball stadium.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we're, because what we did in our early concerts, we always have Q&A, mostly because, I'm legitimately curious. I fell in love with opera when I was 7. So, and I get that that's not a thing for most people. But I'm always curious what is scary, because I was so taken by it immediately that I love to know what is not attractive about it to people. And almost everybody who says, ooh, opera, has never seen one, has never gone. And so it's what the barrier is, even getting people in the door. And so when we were outside, obviously in the pandemic, and the pickup truck, still one of my favorite stories is somebody called the office one day and was like, the office, it was just our house at that point. I mean, it still is, but it was less of an office. Anyway.
For the IRS purposes, it was the office.
Yeah, it was. But he called and he said, now, I just got off the phone with a friend of mine, and he said, y'all sing opera in front of a pickup truck. Well, that I sure could do without the opera, but I sure would like to see your pickup truck. And so it just turned, because what we had done was, we added a lift so that the piano could come on and off. And we had added a brace in the bed of the truck so that the piano could be secured to it and we could drive around with it. And we had a super title screen, and we had outfitted it with an inverter and all kinds. I mean, we built a theater that we could go around Charleston. And so it's, there's a lot of, in the industry, there's a lot of like conversation about building the bridge, right? So that people can walk across to meet you. And what we had I don't mean to say anything was luxurious about the pandemic, but what we had the luxury of doing during the pandemic was building the bridge, crossing the bridge, talking to people on their side of the bridge, and then just like hanging out for a while on their side of the bridge and saying, talk to me. When you're ready, we can walk back across the bridge together, but I'm not forcing you to walk across the bridge. What would make you want to take my hand and walk back across the bridge? And so one of the things we said, what would make you come to opera? And people said, well, hot dogs and beer. That's why I go to baseball. And so we were like, I can provide that. I can provide you hot dog, beer, and fireworks. And so our very first show was, and who doesn't want to, like, I mean, all in theater, it's everyone's dream to have pyrotechnics in a show, right? So at least mine. And so we did a production of La Traviata at our baseball stadium on third base. So the audience was sitting in the stands. So we even got to like pie shape it like theater seating, and there was assigned seating, like the individual seats and the fancy people seats. And then there was bleacher seating, and we just had general admission, like show up, come. We had concessions. We had, and because our partnership with the ballpark, they didn't want to have anything on the grass for too long to make indents in the grass, of course. And so our set designer had quite the challenge that we had to clear the field every night after the show. So we basically built a show every day and cleared the field every day, but we ended up really stripping down the story of La Traviata to the essence of what it is. And that is what we've really been trying to do with opera is do the storytelling, right? Eliminate the music is obviously important to us. We do it high quality, but it is for an audience that is not ready to cross the bridge yet. It's sort of secondary almost to the experience of just coming to the theater.
I'm going to come in for a second. Ellen and I have talked a lot with many, many theater impresarios. And the challenge, even before the pandemic, was building and retaining an audience, because the world has changed. I can sit at home and press a button and, go through 3 or 4 different or 5 different things. It sounds like you guys have to teach a class.
Well, it's, we were just talking about this today too. It's really hard, as we all know. It takes a lot of people to make theater, right? And so it is 2 hugely separate tasks to produce the theater and to engage the community, to continue that engagement, because that both of those machines have to be going at the same time. And that is the part that I think is where the disconnect is with, you know, when we're producing. We did over 30 events last year. Some of them were as small as national anthems. Some of them were, you know, as large as large scale productions. And it also then following up, as, you know, as actors, as the artists on the stage, right? You have the high and then you get the post-show blues. No problem. We're artists first, and like producers, all of you that have always produced everything I've ever done, thank you. I understand you much better now. Producers don't get post-show blues time. You, at least not in the structured time that I've always been used to. Like, curtain goes down, everyone has the best time. We all cry. We're going to stay connected forever. And then you go home and you're sad at home. Producers, that curtain goes down, entertaining your donors, you're following up with everyone saying thank you for coming, you're breaking down, you're checking out, you know, making sure that your post-pro everything goes well, make sure your artists all get back to their airplanes, make sure rental cars get dealt with, make sure all the bills get paid. And it was like, oh, find a new process on top of all of this. And then because we had the great good fortune of really programming all of this work back to back, it just became this like, oh, that's a lot of work. Wait, I might need you to come across the bridge with or without me. Just keep coming, you know. So it's been a really interesting, you know, we're just still feeling each other out.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's important to note is that most theater organizations, and certainly most opera organizations, are nonprofit organizations. And it's always important to recognize that those organizations exist in a community and they should serve that community. And not every community is the same. People accept things differently depending on where you are. And it's important to have that constant engagement with them so that you know what it is that they're ready for. Because would I like to do, you know, Der Kaiser von Atlantis, which was written in, you know, during World War II in a concentration camp? Yes, I think it's an amazing piece. I think it's got an amazing, you know, thing to say and to teach the world. I don't necessarily think that that's something that we're going to do here anytime soon, because I don't know that, you know, that our audiences they're not ready. They might not be ready for that yet. So, you know, it's important to always make sure that with everything that you're presenting, you're also constantly engaging and saying, hey, like that, did we go too far? What's going on here? How do you feel about all this? And that's the only thing that's going to make an organization successful.
What have you found to be the most successful means of making that connection with the community, to ask those questions of, you know, how can we get you here? You want the hot dogs and everything. What's the best way that you have found to start that conversation?
Oh, we just bluntly ask.
Yeah.
You just go out and find people and just say, hey, we run this theater company.
You know, we are at an advantage in that we are both artists and we are both still performers and still perform. And so, you know, it is our organization, but it is also something that we can present, and they get to see the general director up there singing a really hard aria from a really great opera or a Broadway piece. And then they get to talk to us afterwards. So they're talking at the same time to the performer, but also to the leader or to the innovator or to the whatever. And so I think that's really helpful in terms of that connection.
Also to the neighbor, you know, this was so much of why we moved here. I mean, we stand by that we did it to hide, but it's still, you know, these people like watched me go through 2 pregnancies, you know, and also now they're seeing us up on stage, and I don't mean to keep quoting my neighbors, but they are my whole life and why we keep doing this. But this woman, we did a concert with the Charleston Symphony, and people had never, we looked down at this hall when we walked out on the stage, and it was almost the entire front section was our neighbors, some of whom had never been to live classical performing art ever, and in their 60s. And they came not because they care who we are in the industry, it's because they wanted to see us as neighbors. We had said, just in like walking down the street, you know, we're checking mail. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're at a concert this weekend. We'd love for you to come. Right. Whatever. It's so sort of off the cuff, human to human connection, which I think industry-wide opera and musical theater, I think we've lost that connection with our audience. And because, you know, this fourth wall thing that we all do, that, you know, that has become almost a parlor trick when you do it, right? And we all learn as a technique when to break the fourth wall and when not. We just eliminated the fourth wall entirely, and let people feel like kids, right? Basically going back to what we all learned, well, before it was, I guess, beaten out of us as kids, but feeling, what do you feel? And crying when you're sad and yelling when you're angry. And like, that's all in a nutshell. When we say to people, I play dress up for a living, I mean, that's what we do in the best way. And we've honed our craft, and it's not to, you know, diminish all of the work that it takes to do what we do. But there's an element of that you know, we're not these sensitive artist types. We're humans that are super in touch with who we are and how to share that. And you know, being out on the street, I still laugh. I literally did our first Halo concert barefoot because we didn't know it was going to be a thing. And I just spend a lot of my time in Charleston barefoot. And we were on my driveway. We had a 3-month-old in a carrier that I needed to, like, you know, be able to get to should he need me mid-concert. And it was such a funny, that first session of, there was no pretension. This was just like humans connecting in a global crisis and us doing what we do best, which is expressing through art, and watching the audience react in whatever way came naturally, because they had no preconceived notions of how to behave. And it was just this like sincere, authentic, shared moment between artist and audience and neighbors and humans and all the, like, it was so awesome. And so, you know, standing ovation, everyone was standing anyway. It was hilarious, but everyone's clapping and weeping, and, you know, everyone's 6 feet apart from each other. This was pre-masks. So like nobody knew. We all just were, and like people take money and they're like tossing it at us, like on our, it was hilarious. And so we try, as we're growing the company, just to try to maintain that essence of like, what that felt like, what made it happen. You know, if we go do a concert and someone cares more about the truck, okay.
It almost sounds like Shakespeare to me. Shakespeare in England, right from the beginning. It was, you know, come and be, and if you want to throw and eat and holler, but be there and be engaged.
Yes.
And have it touch your life. Are you still leaving town to go sing traditional opera?
I love the air quotes around that. I would like to also just say traditional can be a wide range of things, right? The last large-scale production we did in October was Verdi's Rigoletto, and which is a very traditional Italian opera, right? Now, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. If you think that setting an 18th century opera on a basketball court is untraditional, then that's fine. But what we did was still tell the story. And that doesn't change, right? That sense of tradition of the reason why it was written, the reason why it was created was to tell a story, was to communicate and to get a group of people to feel something and to hear something and to be there all together. I don't necessarily think that what we're doing is untraditional at all. So, but yes, we do still travel and perform, and actually, I've probably done less traditional things abroad than we have produced here in Charleston. I have done a speaking of Shakespeare, I've done the Scottish opera with and I got pulled out of. I was singing Macduff. I got pulled out of a tent that was in the middle downstage center, like a dog on a leash. And then I had to sing my big Act 3 aria. And meanwhile, while I'm doing that, there are three men hanging by their ankles, completely naked, kind of slowly twirling around. So
there's a German Shepherd eating heads thing situation, real actual German Shepherds chasing the Bonko's head. It was amazing.
Yeah.
14,000 skulls on this. It was
the whole stage was just skulls, human
neat.
skulls.
It was neat. Had nothing maybe to do with the show, but it was.
Yeah.
But yes.
We're still communicating, which, where we are is I still to this day, I don't know why there were three men hanging upside down naked. My mom, who came to the show, couldn't even watch me perform because she was so upset about seeing these things that she didn't even see my big aria in Act 3, which I think is hysterical.
Oh, come on, was she upset or was she looking? Come on.
Thank you.
She told me she turned her head away.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Can we call her in? Let's call her in.
This
So
is
what's
like, we said, Charlotte wanted to know how this was going to go. I wrote back and they said, it's just going to go. We're going to have fun.
That's right.
What's your
So-
upcoming season look like before we move on to our final segment?
It's exciting. We haven't announced it yet, so I'm not.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll say it very loud. But it's structurally what we do is we do an opera in the fall and a musical in the spring. Those are our two large scale buckets during the year, and otherwise we do three intimate concerts, things that are more connected, smaller venues and smaller audiences, and sometimes we're able to do them more than once, so we can still sort of mimic the truck concert thing where when what was very impactful that we noticed, high impact, low stress, Dimitri and I would sing, there's no shortage of soprano and tenor repertoire, so that was convenient for us. But we would do the same program 8 to 10 times in 8 to 10 different neighborhoods. And so for the organization as it's growing, we're able to still do, as long as guests are available for an extended period of time, we're able to do one concert in several different locations, which is, it's really cool to just activate all different neighborhoods, all different spaces. We have found more success with our outdoor excursions rather than indoors. So that, again, that presents different challenges as a producer, but if that's what this audience is reacting more positively to, then that is what we will do. So that's an exciting sort of pivot, if that is a little sneak peek without giving any information.
Well, we have reached that time in our episode where we like to do a close-up segment. These are some rapid-fire questions about the two of you. Exactly, and get nice and close to the camera. So, are you ready for your close-ups?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And since there's both, I would love to hear both of your answers. Whoever wants to answer first, just jump on in. But the first question is, when was the moment for you when you just knew, I have to do theater?
7 years old, Carmen. It was magic. I've never seen that many people and that much drama and been so delighted by everything for an extended period of time ever. It was amazing.
6th grade, The Music Man, I was asked to sing The Constable and the Train Conductor. That was the first time that I was on stage with solo lines, and I caught the bug.
What's a production that either you've been involved in or you just saw, if there's a different one besides Carmen for you, Leah, that just had a huge impact on your life that has just really stuck with you?
Fire.
I got one. La Boheme at the Met. It was probably the winter of 98, 99, somewhere around there, December, January. I was actually doing it the following spring for my senior year of college. And my mom, as a Christmas gift, bought a pair of tickets for us to go to the Met to do it. And I cried when I saw it, like as just the curtain went up. And my mom turned to me and she said, you want to sing this someday, don't you? And I said, yeah. And in 2014, I did it on the Met stage. I sang Rodolfo, and it was amazing.
I mean, I think I'm going outside of theater here. That like one of the most impactful concert. I'm an Interlochen kid, and we did Shostakovich 11th Symphony. And I have never in my entire life, it's one of the most dramatic pieces. And it ended, and it's an outside auditorium, an open air auditorium that stares, you're surrounded by nature. There were thousands of people, and the conductor just, stopped at the end, and no one moved. I don't know. Could have been 10 minutes. Not a single human no one could breathe. Everybody, it was like this magical moment of being frozen in time. Larry Rackliff changed my life.
What are some shows / roles that are on the bucket list?
Ooh.
That's so hard because we got old. At least for me, I got old. I aged out of some of my bucket list.
You look fabulous,
Oh, thank you.
Doctor, who was it? Doctor, it'll come to me. She was a psychologist, and she would walk in, and she looked like, 20 miles of bad road, went in the bathroom, got herself together, and we're convinced she walked past the camera and put a little Vaseline on. Joyce Brothers.
Joyce Brothers.
From looking like, a grandmother who the kids just terrorized to Dr. Joyce Brothers. So listen to me, just go in the bathroom, put it together, and a little Vaseline on the lens. You're great.
Great. I love that. Well, in that case, Kiss Me Kate. Definitely singing Lily. I haven't quite aged out of her yet.
There's a set of one-act operas, Cavalleria Rusticana and Pagliacci. I haven't done those yet. When I was 18, I sang Tony in The Most Happy Fella. It was my senior year show, and I am turning 47 next month, and I feel like I could be the most happy fella again.
And in our last 2 minutes, last question for our young listeners out there who are like, opera's kind of cool. What would be your advice for someone who wants to pursue opera?
Opera is cool. Opera is, the little listeners are my absolute favorite. They are the most engrossed in the story. They are, go and see as much as you can, absorb as much as you can, ask all the questions. There are no dumb questions. Ask them all. And if anyone tells you they're dumb, please get in touch with me. I will answer all your questions.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, if you read a book and you don't like the book, do you not read books anymore? Right? So you go to an opera maybe early on and you don't like it. That's not a reason to not go to any operas anymore. Just go to a website and look up the 10 best operas for beginners, right? And try finding them and going and seeing them. There's a reason why they're on those lists. They offer something different. I wouldn't tell somebody to go and see Rosenkavalier or Die Frau ohne Schatten or any of the Wagner things for their first opera. That's not going to hook you, right? Go to something fun, go to something that's got some romance, but it's also, comical and it's light-hearted and feels good at the end. That's the stuff that you want to go to, right? Go to a rom-com. That's how you start.
Did you guys meet on stage?
Sorry?
Did you meet on stage?
We did.
Yeah. 2006 Santa Fe Opera. Yep, that's where we
Got to
met.
get that in.
Yeah.
Oh, Leah, Edwards, Dimitri, Pittas.
Ah.
Ooh. From the Holy City Arts and Lyric Opera Halo in Charleston. Ellen, we need a road trip.
I know. Yeah.
Come
Come
on
for
down, y'all.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we got a
We
great
have an
concert.
Amazing Valentine's Day concert.
Mhm.
Joined by New York friends, so you can just hop on their flight too.
That's right.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Continue.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Work. Thank you.
See you
This has
guys.
been a delight. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. Sing on.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything.